Okay.
That's interesting. Bear with me. Hope
Welcome, everyone,
you see
and
that.
thank you for joining our presentation. My name is Henry Fonseca, and I am CSP's General Manager. First, I'd like to start by thanking the eBuyTech team for putting together this virtual event. We would have loved to see everyone in person, of course, but we hope that next year we'll be able to travel and join you there. But we're glad that we at least get a chance to check in on the biotech community and share all of our new developments with you. I know it's hard to believe that 2021 is almost over. Most of us are still getting used to our post pandemic lives, whatever that means. But as we slowly return to normal, I really think we should take a moment to reflect on the challenges and successes of the past year. Now, the end of the year is always a great opportunity to look ahead and set goals for the future. And I'm not just talking about any pesky New Year's resolutions that we're going to quickly forget once February comes along. What I mean is that as individuals and as organizations, we should take a moment to visualize where we want to go, plan a roadmap for how we want to move forward, and start taking the necessary steps to help us reach those goals. And at CSP, we work hard to stay ahead of the inevitable changes that the nonstop landscape will face. Our goal remains unchanged after 35 years in the industry. We continue to find ways to honor our past and preserve our legacy while looking at the future to ensure we offer our customers the best security solutions available for nonstop systems. And this year, one of our proudest achievements was the introduction of a new cloud based framework for some of our most popular applications. So we're introducing a new cloud native application, and the first part of this new CSP CNA, as we call it, is a redesigned version of CSP Authenticator Plus, which is our multi-factor authentication solution. Authenticator Plus is now a cloud-native application built using a cloud-based framework, and I'm going to give you a demo so you can see how this new version of Authenticator Plus works. But first, let me talk a little bit about why we chose to develop this cloud-native solution and why it's an important piece of the corporate IT infrastructure. We understand that the IT landscape is rapidly evolving, and today it calls for a flexible and dynamic business operating environment. So having a highly optimized IT infrastructure is going to help us embrace digital transformation, scale business operations, and accelerate overall growth. And most of us are aware of the immense benefits that cloud computing offers in terms of accessibility, scalability of applications, and low infrastructure and maintenance costs. And new technologies for building cloud applications such as containers, Kubernetes, and serverless architectures are already reshaping the way enterprises build and deploy business applications. But they've also introduced a new set of risks that you can't mitigate by applying the traditional approaches to application security. So the question is, how are we going to ensure the security of our cloud native applications? Developers are also under pressure to build and ship applications faster than ever and update applications frequently through automated processes. So corporations are now deploying applications developed on containers straight into production, managing them with orchestration tools such as Kubernetes, and then running them in the cloud. As a result, our productivity is going to increase, of course, but so is our organizational risk. So we really have to figure out how to strike a balance between speed and security. And this requires a comprehensive strategy to proactively address cloud-native security requirements. An inclusive cloud security strategy is going to allow an organization to detect security issues earlier in the development lifecycle without slowing down the whole process. So organizations are going to have to implement a multi-pronged security approach just to ensure that secure access to information across the different cloud environments is being maintained. All of these unified policies really have to govern access and control, regardless of whether the security gateways and services are located on-site or on the cloud. And an organization also has to consider deploying the right security solutions for cloud-based business operations. We have to strengthen network and IT infrastructure security, and that's going to be crucial for businesses. But when it comes to cloud security, it's not just about placing a firewall at the peripheral of the cloud infrastructure. From a security standpoint, really, it includes a comprehensive analysis of the current policies, procedures, and security standards that are in place. So depending on the current security stance, an organization is going to have to implement numerous security tools, including intrusion prevention and detection systems, identity access management, and of course, multi-factor authentication. So the use of identity and access management, for example, within the cloud application deployments, is going to become more relevant as organizations modernize security approaches and technologies to align with access to the cloud infrastructure. Now, modern authentication methods represent a more robust security structure, and they also provide a better user experience when logging into applications. MFA also makes it easier for auditors to get answers to critical compliance questions, providing information such as which users are granted access to which systems, and also how the access policy is being reliably enforced. Some of the more modern MFA applications available today also include reporting capabilities, and that's also going to ensure that compliance standards such as PCI DSS requirements are being met. This brings us to our latest cloud-based solution for multi-factor authentication. It's called CSP Authenticator Plus, and it's a new cloud-native application that was built using modern technologies, and we really focused on three key areas: security, flexibility, and scalability. CSP Authenticator Plus was developed using a cloud-based framework. It provides multi-factor authentication for non-stop systems and supports various authentication methods right out of the box. It can be used as a safeguard SEEP or with pathway and non-pathway applications. So almost any application, including Tackle, can now easily support multi-factor authentication. And some of the authentication methods that we've included are Radius, Active Directory, RSA, and OpenLDAP. All of these are supported. And we also have some additional authentication methods like email, text message, Google Authenticator. So it comes preloaded and with support for all of these different authentication methods. And this new version of CSP Authenticator Plus also supports various databases, including Amazon S3 or any other S3 compatible storages, Atlas Cloud Service, etcd, and MongoDB. Okay, so now it's time for the CSP Authenticator Plus demo. Let me show you exactly what we've done and how we've advanced this new cloud-native application for multi-factor authentication. Okay, so now I'm going to give you a tour through CSP Authenticator Plus. This is the new redesign that we're coming out with. As I mentioned, this is a high availability cloud-native application built using modern technologies. And for this redesign, really focused on three key areas: security, flexibility, and scalability. So that includes supporting Kubernetes Helm deployments, supporting high availability environments through highly available Kubernetes clusters, which provide that added resilience. We've also stopped differentiating between primary and secondary authentication methods because users should be able to choose any mix of available authentication methods that they need. So for this, I'm just going to log in using my Active Directory username and password. So let me type that in, hopefully correctly, without any typos. Okay, once Authenticator Plus has validated that my credentials are correct, then it's going to ask me for a secondary authentication method. So my user profile has also been set up for a secondary authentication factor. In this case, it's an OTP token that's delivered via Google Authenticator, and that's just an app that shows you a code and it has a time limit on it. So I'm going to enter that before it runs out. Then Authenticator Plus validates that code, and we're in. Okay, so now that we've successfully logged in as an administrator, and this is something that I want to highlight, is that this is one of the main differences between our previous version of Authenticator Plus and the new cloud version, and that's that only administrators have to log on to the application. Users are no longer required to access Authenticator Plus for the initial setup of their authentication methods. So if you're familiar with the previous version, once an administrator gave you your credentials for your authentication methods, you had to come in as a user and enable those, and then the next time you signed into your application, those were good to go. Those authentication factors were already there. But here we've eliminated that step, which really makes it easier because users no longer need to set up anything really. They just receive their credentials and they know that the authentication methods are good to go now. So everything I'm about to show you again is only for an administrator. So this is our home page, obviously, and on the left-hand side, you can see the different options that we have via the menu here. This icon on the upper right-hand side also shows you the current user that's logged in. It can take you to the user's profile, and you can also use our help functions or log out from the application here. So another key difference between the previous version of Authenticator Plus and the new cloud version is that authentication methods are now assigned to profiles via an authentication policy. And I'm going to show you how we do this, but basically users can be quickly added, deleted, or changed on those profiles. Okay, so with a cloud native version, we have an authentication profile that can be connected by a single instance on a nonstop server. That means that we can support multiple authentication profiles, and the internal structure of these profiles is also very flexible. So to set up an authentication profile, again, we come to the profiles page, and it shows you a list of authentication profiles and details for each one. So clicking on the left side of the screen brings up the details for that specific profile. So here you can see that I've created some. You can see the name or the profile owner. You can see whether it's protected or unprotected. That means this one is locked for editing, but this one, for example, I could come in and edit. Let me just take you to the one that I was working on. So as you see, when you toggle between the profile list here, you can see the profile details for that specific profile there. So if a profile is locked, only the profile owner can edit the details on that profile. If it's unlocked, then other users can change the profile settings, but only a profile owner can lock or unlock it, even if other users can edit it. So mine right now is locked. It's protected. Let me unlock it. And that means that other users would be able to make changes here. I don't want them to, so let's keep it locked. For this one, for example, this profile, you can see that I can change some settings here. But I can't make it protected. So, because I'm not the owner, right? So let me go back to mine. So under the profile detail section, I can edit the profile description, the number of failed authentication attempts allowed, and the length of the authentication timeout. So let's just change those right now. I want to be a little bit more lenient. Okay. I'd also like to mention that the profile description is only used to identify the profile on the configuration screen and the authentication logs. And that's going to allow you to identify your login attempts by profile description on your log files. We're also now using an access key and a secret key instead of a password or hash like we were doing before. And so here you can also assign authentication policies to a profile. As I mentioned before, all secondary authentication methods are associated with a policy instead of a profile. So if an administrator has to stop authentication activity for a profile, they don't have to change the authentication configuration settings or delete any users. Okay, so let me take you, this is a profile that I had created, but we're gonna delete it using this button down here. And we are gonna create a new profile to show you how we're gonna set it up. So let's call it TBC 2021 test. And let's change the number of authentication retries to 3. Let's change this to 500. Okay, I have my profile access key, my secret key there. And you can see that I already have a default authentication policy in here. I can also make this protected and activate my profile. And this blue button here lets me add a new policy profile. So let's click there. I'm gonna change the name of that. Let's call it TBC-HF. Okay, and if I click on that, it'll actually take me to my authentication methods page. So let's do that. And so here you can see that I'm under the selected profile TBC 2021 test, which is the one that we just created. I selected this policy, and now I can start adding some authentication methods in. So let me scroll down and show you some of the authentication methods that we already have. We have the Authenticator, which is just a Google Authenticator OTP that I showed you earlier. LDAP, Active Directory, Radius, SMTP, and some others there that we've included. So let's add some here, and adding authentication methods onto a policy is as easy as clicking this little blue arrow here or dragging and dropping them. And I can add or remove however many I need. Okay. So some methods can be activated right away, like Authenticator. You see here there's a little tool icon that's grayed out, and I'm able to activate that method right away. But others, like Radius, I need some additional configuration details. So let's click on that blue icon, and it's going to take you to the settings, the configuration for the specific authentication method. Now you can change all of these as you need. Obviously, you can test the configurations, make sure that they're correct, and then apply your settings. Let's go back to our profile here. It was the TBC 2021, if I'm not mistaken, and the policy was, or maybe it was, how was it? Okay, let's go back to the profile here. TBC test. There we go. Okay. So now this user is going to have, or this user profile is going to have a policy which includes these authentication methods. Okay. Now let's return to that profiles page, and I'll show you the last feature, which is this user management type. Now, in Authenticator Plus, a user database is attached to the authentication profile. A new database is created inside the cloud application each time you create an authentication profile. The database has a set of management rules which you can enable for different profiles. So this first one here, called manual, is just a user database management that allows you to add or remove users to the current authentication profile manually. It's simple and straightforward. You select a profile, then manually add or remove users. Now you see we have 3 other options here aside from manual. You can choose synchronization, and that's automatic synchronization, which does not allow for manual operation of users. Instead, users are synchronized with the remote host automatically. The remote host details must be provided by the system administrator. And this type of user management effectively connects a profile to a remote instance of the OSS gateway. The remote instance then syncs the user database with the specific profile selected. Now, pass-through authentication also does not allow for the manual operation of user management. Instead, only a username password-based authentication method is allowed. Selecting the set of user management rules disables the user database, and synchronization will no longer be allowed. nor will secondary authentication tokens. And the final one, which is smart, the automatic smart user management does not allow for the manual operation of user management. Instead, users are added on demand, but they can be edited and removed manually. The set of user management rules works without synchronization, but supports secondary authentication tokens. So in the smart user management, the only way to add a user is via a successful logon attempt. So just as an example, if a user enters their login credentials and Authenticator Plus forwards the request to Active Directory, if the authentication is successful, then a user with that username is created. If a secondary authentication method was configured for the policy that governs the user account, then the user will also be asked for that second authentication factor. And if they provide the correct credentials, then that secondary authentication factor will also be added to the user account. So the same process takes place on a safeguard console. Using the smart user management, users working on an on-stop server won't have to go to an external website and log via a web browser. They simply enter their regular credentials on the console during their first logon. So this completes the admin setup of the Authenticator Plus Cloud Native application. You can search for specific users or groups under the users section. So you can see that my profile already has a bunch of users created. I can also add a new user or delete it very easily. And I can also switch to different profiles that we've created. See, for this one, I would have to add more users. Same here. And you can obviously search for a user and you can make changes to that specific user or to group users. So here you could select between different policies that you want to apply to that user or you want to edit for that user. Okay, now that we've completed the admin setup, I'm going to show you how a user would log into an application via tackle prompt. So let me just log out here and take you to our NS3X here. Okay, let me make that a little bit bigger. Okay. Now it's going to ask me for my credentials. And this specific user that we're using for this example just has Radius authentication enabled. So it recognized the user and now it's asking me for my Radius password. And as long as I provide the correct one, then it'll let me go in. And that's it. That's the end of the demo. Now let me go back to our presentation here. Okay, let me show you some of the benefits that CSP Authenticator Plus provides. Of course, it's going to protect your valuable resources and data, but it's also going to add layers of authentication for secure access to systems and critical applications. It addresses PCI compliance requirement 8.3 specifically, which requires multi-factor authentication for all personnel with remote access and non-console admin access to the cardholder data environment. And it also integrates with centralized ID management systems to help you effectively manage users. Now, some of the new features that we've included in CSP Authenticator Plus, of course, it's a new cloud-based framework. This means that it's a cloud-native application built using modern technologies with a focus on security, flexibility, and scalability. It supports Kubernetes Helm deployments, making it easy to deploy in cloud environments using the Kubernetes framework. It also supports high availability environments, so you can create highly available Kubernetes clusters for resiliency. There's no difference between primary and secondary authentication. Users can choose any mix of available authentication methods, and I've already shown you some of the ones that we're supporting right out of the box. And the redesigned user interface is very intuitive and user-friendly. Okay, so that's all the time that I have. I guess we can start the Q&A if anyone has any questions. I'm also going to leave up some additional resources here while I take any questions that you may have. Please feel free to reach out, visit our website, or contact us via email with any comments or questions that you have. If you want to see a demo of one of our specific products, even if it's not Authenticator Plus, we'd be happy to get back to you and give you a demo of everything that we do.
Over to you, Henry.
Okay. If anyone has any questions. If not, thank you. We appreciate your time. And I'll give it back to Colin. You can always email us or contact us through our website. Thank you very much, Colin.
Thank you very much, Henry. Yep. Thanks a lot. So yeah, everybody, if you want to head back to the main room,